When you hear the word teacher, you probably picture someone up at the front of the class, teaching math or history. But what if the most important thing they do isn't teaching the curriculum, but actually building a bridge to it? Okay, let's get into what that really means.
So we're asking a really fundamental question today. What is a deaf and hard of hearing teacher's real job? Because it goes so much deeper than what most people assume, and it's all built on some really fascinating legal and educational ideas.
And this slide right here, this really nails the difference. See, most people think, okay, a DHH teacher just teaches the same old curriculum. But the reality? No. Their actual #1 job is to build access to that curriculum. Without that, nothing else can happen.
To really get why this is such a big deal, think about it like this. Imagine the standard school curriculum is behind a locked door. For a lot of DHH students, that door is shut tight, right from day one.
And here's the core of the issue. It all comes down to language. So many deaf and hard of hearing kids start school having missed out on all that constant, casual language that hearing kids are surrounded by. And that's not just a small gap, it's foundational. Language is literally the key to that locked door.
So here's the bottom line. Just handing a DHH student a standard textbook without addressing their language needs first, well, it's like asking someone to read a book before you've even taught them the alphabet. This isn't about how smart a kid is. It's about whether they can even get to the information in the first place.
And this is where it gets really interesting, because this whole approach isn't just some nice educational theory. It is a legal mandate. There are actual legal keys that DHH teachers use to unlock that door for their students.
The master key is a concept called Specially Designed Instruction, or SDI. This is the legal definition of special education under the big federal law, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. You might know it as IDEA. It basically says you have to adapt the teaching to fit the kid, not force the kid to fit the teaching.
And IDEA gets super specific when it comes to DHH students. The law actually says that the team planning a student's education must, it's not a suggestion, they must consider their unique language and communication needs first and foremost.
And check this out. States can take this even further. Texas, for example, has this incredibly clear law. It says a student's unique communication mode, whether that's American Sign Language, spoken English, whatever, it has to be respected, used, and developed. That's powerful stuff.
Okay, but what does making progress actually look like? Well, for a long time, the bar was, frankly, on the floor. But then a massive Supreme Court case in 2017 called Andrew F. completely changed the game.
Before this case, the standard was often just merely more than de minimis progress, which is just a fancy way of saying a tiny bit more than nothing. The Supreme Court looked at that and said, nope, not good enough. They set a whole new standard. Progress has to be appropriately ambitious.
Chief Justice Roberts wrote the opinion, and this phrase right here is what changed everything. He said an educational program has to let a child make progress appropriate in light of the child's circumstances. That last part, in light of the child's circumstances, that's the key.
So let's connect the dots here. For a deaf or hard of hearing student, what are their main circumstances? It's their specific language and communication needs. So this ruling basically says that for any academic progress to count as meaningful, you first have to address that foundational need for language access.
Okay, so we have the challenge and we have the legal framework. So how do DHH teachers actually do it? Let's open up their toolkit and see how they build that bridge to the curriculum every day.
It really comes down to those 3 pillars of specially designed instruction. Teachers are constantly adapting what they teach, how they teach it, and the way they present the information to the student.
So what does this actually look like in a classroom? Well, it can be tons of things. Like explicitly teaching vocabulary that hearing kids just pick up. It means spending time building background knowledge, using a lot of visual aids, changing up texts, and sometimes even going back to teach concepts that were missed earlier because of that language gap.
So all of this leads to the central challenge that every DHH teacher has to deal with every single day. It's this incredible balancing act.
You've got these 2 huge forces pushing in opposite directions. On one side, there's the whole accountability system, all about grade-level standards and standardized tests for everybody. But on the other side, you've got special education law, which demands that instruction be individualized to give a student meaningful access. Those 2 things don't always line up.
And who's standing right in the middle of that tug of war? The DHH teacher. They're the expert, the specialist who has to navigate those competing demands. They're the bridge builder, making sure their students get the access they are legally guaranteed while still aiming for those high academic standards.
So look, if you take just one thing away today, let it be this. For deaf and hard of hearing students, language isn't just a helpful add-on. It's not a supplement. It is the absolute prerequisite for every other kind of learning.
And that leaves us with one final, really important question. The law tells us what we have to do, and teachers have the tools to do it. But if language is truly the key that unlocks a child's entire future, how do we as a whole system make absolutely sure that every single student who needs that key actually gets it?